Well, I said in the last review that I was going to go into the finale of She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, a little bit nervous because it and the episode before it I had actually liked quite a bit. And I was worried that it was going to drop the ball at the last minute. And thankfully, that didn't happen. It didn't quite nail it, and it comes down to small preferences and execution on my part. But the heart of what this finale is doing, what it went for, is exactly what I feel it should have gone for. Again, there's like small things that for me, like that isn't quite, but like the core idea of it, of this finale, is exactly what I think it should have been for the show. And for that, honestly, I'm pretty happy, despite the fact that I'm going to register some minor complaints as we go. So there's a couple of things about this finale. So the first is, as someone who has already made the complaint personally about all the Marvel stuff ending in big fights, even when it doesn't make sense for it to, most notoriously, for me at least, with WandaVision, I was getting increasingly frustrated with how things were starting to pan out. The point at which I was like, oh no, was the point when Jen's friends had already infiltrated intelligentsia. It turned out to be headed by that tech bro. Huge surprise. Not really. We all kind of figured that. And then she tries to go and see Emil. She tries to go and see Abomination. And she gets told, oh, he's in the lodge. Well, I'd already clocked that the place where these guys were meeting looked very lodge-like. So I was like, oh, no, he's in on it, which would have completely undermined a big part of what I loved about 2 episodes ago, the whole one at the retreat, and how much I admired that Marvel was committing to not doing the standard thing of, treating therapy like, oh, it's they're secretly evil, or in some way undermining the idea of mental and personal mental health and self-care, which is what would have happened. And then he shows up. I'm like, oh crap. But then he started talking, and I was like, even before the stuff that comes a little later that I'm about to talk about, when he got on the mic and he started talking in very generic terms, I was like, oh, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what this group actually is. He thinks this is just like a motivational speaking gig. Oh, okay. And that tracked a little bit better. Normally part of my brain would be going, did he not look into who the heck he was speaking for? But then knowing how much of his deal in the show has been people deserve a chance, I could see him having gone for this, possibly even with very little research, just assuming he could do some good no matter who they were. That's not firmly established. That bit's my headcanon. But I did realize, like, oh, he doesn't know. So that helped. But then, the guy, the tech bro, injected himself with the blood. I'm like, oh, here we go. But then when Titania busted through the wall and showed up, I'm like, wait a minute. They have not accounted for why she would be here. I think they're about to flip this on its head. And then when Bruce broke through the ceiling, I'm like, oh, there's no way this is the actual finale. And then Jen rightly called it out. And she did what I had been hoping, and what I said early on. I hope that these fourth wall breaks build on each other and aren't just takes to camera. And this, especially doing it in the finale, is exactly what I meant. Because this is the kind of stuff that She-Hulk, specifically the sensational She-Hulk run that started in the 80s, did a lot, which is to flat out stop the story dead, to call out the creators for their nonsense. And that is what is done here, and visually done in a way that is unique to television, in the same way that when it was done in the comics, it was done in a way that was unique to comics. So this is what I have wanted for the fourth wall breaks. And while I can have my sort of little feelings about how well it was built up to, this is the payoff I wanted for the fourth wall breaks. So I was really happy to see that. That having been said, it did go on a little longer than I think it should have. So things like her beating up the security guards, how much time was spent with her talking to the writer's room before she goes to see Kevin. I'm a little bit mixed on the Kevin is an AI gag, when obviously the initial reference is to Kevin Feige, who runs the MCU effectively. But at the same time, like, if they did anything else, he's not an actor. If they tried to have him play himself, it probably would have been real painful. So if for that reason alone, this was probably a better decision. Even though it does feel a little bit like letting him off the hook, like we're not going to call out the actual person who has been in charge of these decisions. We're going to pretend it's an AI. It does feel like from a matter of satire, it does feel like dodging and giving him an out a little bit. But again, given the medium and given that it would have required him to act, yeah, probably still was the right move to make. It's something that I'd call out a lot more harsher if this was done in the comics, where like they go and have her like, I'm gonna go talk to, like, if back in the 80s she'd gone, I'm gonna go talk to Stan, and it turned out Stan was a robot. I'm like, look, just draw the dude, just call out the actual dude. Here there is actually a reason to not do it that way, because like I said, he's not an actor. And if they cast somebody to be an impersonator of him, everybody would have noticed and would have been like, oh, but so like this is a better pivot. I get it. So we have all that, and there are, however, still other little things that were kind of issues for me along the way that again kind of reared their head here. The very loose nature of the legal aspect is part of that. That was actually an issue for me at the beginning, because we start out with Jen, in the same kind of prison that Abomination was in, being offered a plea deal for, to get the restraint put on so she can't transform. They never really said what she was going to be charged with. And that's actually a really big issue for me with something that is ostensibly partially meant to be about the law and legal issues. So I was left thinking, like, first of all, on what basis are they arresting her like this? Like, based off what she actually did, it was property destruction and maybe reckless endangerment. Those generally are not things that you are held without bail, first of all. And before anybody says, oh, but the Sokovia Accords, those have been confirmed as being taken off the books and revoked. So if there is new law on the books in the MCU that says a superpowered person is not entitled to bail, they needed to establish that somewhere along the line. But then even if I get past that, there's the issue of the plea deal she took. Because again, since they never said what she was being charged with, she basically, like, meta sense, she's just being charged with having an emotional reaction. And that is, so I want to be clear, that aspect is really good. The fact that everybody has made this conversation about her reaction instead of being about the violation of her privacy and what was done to her. That shift in focus, which is fundamentally wrong, does happen and was right to depict. So that part of it, I'm totally on board with. It's some of the specifics that took me out of it. So like I said, they never really say specifically what she was going to be charged with. And again, based off what I saw, it was property destruction and reckless endangerment. Even the worst case scenario on those, I don't see how she wouldn't be able, especially on what is effectively a first offense, so far as I'm aware, to be able to just make her argument, and even worst case scenario, probably pay a fine. I think it was very unlikely that she was going to see jail time based off what was actually depicted as being criminal action from her. It wasn't severe enough to warrant her accepting a deal that was gonna nerf her like this. So again, it's the kind of very loose handling of the legal aspect of the show that I wish was tighter, because stuff like that just kept taking me out of it. I also do want to come back to Abomination real quick. While I did ultimately appreciate that, A, like, he didn't know, and B, like, he let them arrest him again and was like, look, I have been still transforming. I said I wouldn't. Fair. Let me go back. But then it gets completely undercut by Wong getting him out. And actually that whole gag at the end felt fundamentally wrong for the character of Emil as they had built him up to this point. Because not only does he accept the means to just escape, which, yes, we know he's done before, but like, they've kind of built a thing about him owning up to when he did something he shouldn't have and then trying to be better. Like, this is literally something he's already got in trouble for. And he's asked, do you have Wi-Fi? His retreat was all about being unplugged. And while I could buy, yeah, maybe sometimes he's not at the retreat and he's a little bit plugged in, like, that's a weird question for him to be asking of all people, based off what the focus on him has been in this show. It felt like for a hot second they forgot half of his characterization in order to have a throwaway gag, which in a vacuum, the gag was fine, but not for this character. That didn't work. And again, that's kind of what I mean by like these little things that I'm like, these little things that don't ruin it for me, but do make it a lesser experience because they pull me out of enjoying doing the core thing that it's doing, which again, I think is exactly what it should have been doing. If it's going to call out how most Marvel things end in a fight, then yes, it should depict how kind of dumb it is to build up to that. And, she should call it out. She should put a stop to that. She should demand a correct and proper conclusion. Now, if you're into logistics, it does absolutely skip over exactly when the police showed up in terms of this guy getting arrested. Like, it glosses over a lot of stuff, but that stuff isn't the point. The point is the writers tried to saddle her with the wrong ending, the wrong conclusion, the wrong climax, and she just flat out goes, no, that's not what we're doing. And that's what should have happened. So that's sort of coming back to what I said at the very beginning of this review, which is that what they are doing, the core of it, the heart of it, and the idea of it is absolutely what it should be. There's just the little tiny things that are making it not land quite as well as I would have liked. But these are nitpicks. These are, can we fine tune that for a future season, assuming we get one? I also expect people are going to ask me if I don't, they're not going to ask me, but they are going to wonder if I don't bring up the reveal of Bruce's son, Scar. If I don't talk about that, people are going to be like, why didn't you talk about this? Well, I have little to no opinion of it. I am aware of Scar as a character. I have not read much with him in it. I don't really have an opinion on the character. If that is going to be a thing that actually shows up in like the movies, this is a somewhat odd place to debut it, given the nature of this show. But I mean, the thing is, for me, the footnote of him being introduced here is going to be just that. It's going to be a footnote for whatever they do with the character going forward. And it's an odd character to introduce, given his ties to specifically like the World War Hulk storyline. And the way they currently have the Hulk working, that story, I can't imagine any way they could possibly do that storyline unless they completely supplant it onto Sakaar and basically give him the role the Hulk had in the comic book version. Which, now that I say it out loud, I could actually totally see the MCU doing. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't have too many thoughts on him. Daredevil showing up again. It was a decent little bit. I did kind of like how immediately uncomfortable he was at their family dinner as they talk about, how much money do you make? Can you afford kids? Kids are expensive here in LA. And he's like, ooh, I did not know that this was going to be the topic. And Jen's dad going, this will always be the topic. It just felt like a family gathering. It felt like my family's not like that, if I'm being honest. But I've been to family gatherings that were more than a little like that. So that felt like a nice note as well. And overall, what I really appreciate about this series, if I'm going to get to sort of overall thoughts, I really appreciate that it got stronger and it had its best stuff in the last 3 episodes. Now, what I would like is if this gets another season, which I would definitely be up for, I want these last 3 episodes and the care that was put into them to be the template for what a second season looks like. Because I think ultimately, if I were to break down part of, or at least a major part of why I did not especially care for the first 6 episodes, other than like small bits here and there, is because a lot of the aspects felt kind of careless. There was a lot of stuff that felt just kind of thrown in for the sake of the joke at the expense of storytelling, and like the legal stuff being so loose as to actually take me out of what is theoretically a legal show. And don't ever tell me that you can't be legally accurate and funny. I offer you up Cousin Vinny. Go away now. Go watch it and laugh your ass off. But so that kind of carelessness with certain aspects of the show is what I would like to see much less of. And I saw way more care and very specific intent put into those last 3 episodes. And they were just focused in a way that most of what I saw in the first 6 episodes just weren't. They were just loose. They were kind of silly. And like, while there were moments and things that I liked about them, they hold nothing on the last 3 episodes. The last 3 episodes, the improvement to the quality is so much to me. And that is where I would like this to be. And if it can get there and stay there, then there is a chance that this iteration of She-Hulk could be one that I end up loving almost as much as the one from the comics, because I really like She-Hulk. And what I saw in these last 3 episodes, even as I've complained about some of the tiny specifics about the finale, but again, the core of what the finale is doing is yes. If they can hold on to that, I do want more. So we'll see. She-Hulk, final episode for this season, possibly for the show. We'll see. This is definitely a show that could have more seasons. I would say more than any of the other shows, except maybe What If, since that was also highly episodic. But this one really does feel built to have more seasons, and I'd like to know sooner rather than later if that's going to happen. In any case, what were your thoughts on this? Whatever they were, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills around here, allows me to do this as my living. Any amount that you can help me with, well, that keeps this whole thing up and running. But even if you can't, the likes, the shares, and subscribes are helpful as well. Not trying to put too much pressure on you. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can come on back next time you need a break. All right, time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Loli, Becky Sparks, Fernobulax, The Poodle, Zach, Bookworm, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. Thank you for your support. If you want to hear me try and say your name while this little guy tries to chew on my earrings, well, you can check out the Patreon for the support tiers that get you a shout out. Thanks so much. You are a pain in my butt.